Welcome back into another episode of Rock Boys Football. Last episode, we covered the Clemson Tigers, and for this episode, we are going to stay in the ACC Conference and move over to the Miami Hurricanes. Miami is one of my favorite teams in the country. I think they're a super underrated team going into this year with some serious playmakers on both sides of the ball, and I am excited to show you and tell you guys what I think about this team before we go into it. As usual, we appreciate you guys liking and subscribing to the channel, checking us out on Apple Podcasts, and at our website at rockboysfootball.com. And in the comments, let us know what you guys think. We love hearing feedback and for future video topics. Without further ado, we're going to jump right into this Miami Hurricanes football team, and it's going to start with one of the most electrifying players in the country, Tyreke King at quarterback. I mean, looking at past Miami football teams, I just think that's one thing they've really been missing is a quarterback that they can really rely on. And Tyreke King came in and shifted that narrative. He threw for a 152 QBR and also provided some serious explosion on the ground, rushing for 538 yards. You really couldn't play man coverage against this team without having a spy. You needed somebody to have an eye on Tyreke King. And, I mean, you could tell during this season that he brought so much more to this offense than in past years. D, what are your initial thoughts on the Miami Hurricanes?
Yeah, I mean, what does excite you is they have solved their ultimate problem. Solid Miami football team last year, actually. I know they got drubbed by Clemson, which hurts because you want to see them kind of take that step into being maybe competitive on the side of the big dogs. So, you naturally didn't see that at all last year. I think they really struggled in their two big games against North Carolina and Clemson. So I don't know that they fixed their as much as like maybe fixing the quarterback spot. They still look like they're a little ways off on the rest of the field on a high level, especially. I know their offensive line's returning a fair amount of starters, but never looked like it was maybe top level good and struggles against good teams. I mean, they're bringing back probably the best left tackle in the country with Zion Nelson and three other starters. So we'll see if they can make another step. And it's not to say they were bad last year, but they weren't competitive when put against top tier talent. So
yeah, I think in a very similar way, we were talking about Clemson, where that offensive line isn't a problem until you start playing the big dogs. That might be true this year. What's encouraging to me about that offensive line is many Miami fans remember 2 years ago when they played Florida, that this offensive line, Zion Nelson started that game. I mean, they just couldn't compete. I think there was like 6 or 7 sacks that game, pretty much just getting fed by that defensive line, which was good at Florida. But the rest of the year, that offensive line just was so weak. But then come that last year, that offensive line I thought was not nearly as bad. You saw remarkable improvements on pretty much every aspect of that offensive line. And now you return every single starter till this year. I mean, and add a couple of transfers, one from Houston, who's going to add some depth. Like, I just see this offensive line trending in the right direction. And as you return guys who have meaningful experience, I'm looking forward to big things from this offensive line, both in the run game and protecting Tyreke King.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about Miami too, I think their offensive line and hopefully I think they can get a little better at the running back spot. Like I didn't love Cameron Harris's game last year. I thought he was a solid player, but maybe you want to see another step taken, whether that's from Cameron Harris or one of the others, because they've recruited that position at a fairly high level.
Yes.
So maybe you hope you can see something a little more dynamic than what Cameron Harris gives, because he's a more of a, at least from watching him last year, looked more of a power back, a little less athletic than maybe you'd like to see at the running back spot. But But I think if they take a step there, that could definitely help, especially because Tyreke King's not exactly going to light it up in the pocket ever, so that's not his game.
Yeah, but he can do it. I think I agree with you on Cameron Harris. I love him because he's an absolute muscle hamster. but you did see just really stiff in the open field. He didn't make too many guys miss when he got to the second level, like elite running backs tend to do. He runs the ball hard. I mean, this dude is a mountain of muscle, and I don't want to. I can't imagine there's many people in the country that want to tackle this guy. That being said, he kind of lacks that shake that Jalen Knighton and Donald Chaney kind of brought. And so I think it is like a good 1-2, but I do think Cameron Harris, hopefully we see a little bit better aspects of him in space when he gets to that second level. But Donald Chaney and Jalen Knighton both do bring that to the backfield.
The problem is they don't take any carries in comparison to. I mean, them two combined basically got what
he had.
Cameron was getting. So
yeah,
I don't know unless they start spreading that out a little bit. And obviously they used Tyreke King a ton running it, so that eats carries too. And he is fairly dynamic, I would say, as a running back. Not fairly,
he's
but
very good.
Very. He's a very productive runner, especially, and a very productive scrambler, I'll say. So when he gets
he's a good scrambler. I think that's when he's best. And he's best when he's reading at the end and he takes if the DN crashes. Like he's got some serious wheels in space. And obviously, I guess it's important to note that he did tear his ACL in that bowl game. Everything we are reading is that he is on his way to be 100% by week 1 when they have to play Alabama. So that's kind of how we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about him like he's going to make a full recovery and be that player that we saw last year. Hope as just a fan of football, I hope we get to see that because I really like watching that cat play. And let's get to the wide receiver position, which is one of the position groups I'm most excited about. They keep Mike Harley, they keep D. Wiggins, they keep Pope. All three of those guys were kind of speedsters. Like you want to get them the ball in space, or you want to give them a little fly route and let them run right past the DB. What they weren't really is like a possession receiver. You didn't see them really run clean routes, like quick inside slants and catch the ball. They can get separation, but that's normally due to their speed, not really like their route running or like that possession trait of a wide receiver. Now that's what in my mind, I thought they were missing. Now in come Charleston Rambo, transfer from Oklahoma. And this kid is very good. And if any of you guys watched the spring game at home, he was a phenomenal aspect in this offense. Obviously, Tyreke King wasn't starting, but him and Jake Garcia had a very, very good connection between the two. And I look forward to seeing how they use him in the coming year.
It's a huge get for them. Because, again, it brings a guy who is ultra skilled in a sense at that wideout spot. Now, Oklahoma players at the wideout spot in general are fairly comfortable running all the routes and in catching balls, not so much relying on deep balls, really, because Oklahoma's never been a deep ball team. They're explosive, but they run a lot of plays, catch balls, and run in space is generally the formula that has been in the Oklahoma program. So maybe you think bringing Charleston Rambo over from that system and allowing him to be that intermediate short ball catcher that again, you noted, they really never had. So hopefully he can carry that through, because Tyreke King kind of needs that. He's not a big arm quarterback and he's a fine thrower. Not that I see him as an NFL prospect exactly or a high prospect, but for college, he does throw the ball at a fairly high level, and it probably will help him to have a guy who's more dependable. And last year, they mostly did it through their tight end and Brevin Jordan, who I'm not in love with. I thought they used him a lot, but I didn't think he played at a particularly high level last year. I thought he dropped some balls that hurt. And I mean, I don't think there's a ton to replace there as much as
Will Mallory. I think Will Mallory is just as capable. Maybe not the athlete as Brevin Jordan might have been, but Will Mallory's got probably more reliable hands and probably better catching across the middle in contested situations. I think he's actually one of the better tight ends in the ACC and in the country. So I mean, like maybe they lose like that type of tight end, but they still have another tight end in the chamber who's ready to rock and roll for sure. And yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the offense. I guess to conclude is what you said. Derek King, he's not a pro prospect at like pocket passer, and I think everybody knows that. But he does it well enough where you have to respect it. And when you start respecting
Oh,
it,
I
that's
didn't
when
mean
the
to
run
say
game.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No.
he's certainly respectable.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He threw for over 2,500 yards last year. Very, very good. Only threw 5 picks too. I mean, this team, this offense it looked way better with him. One other guy I want to mention, I believe he's a second year now, Xavier Restrepo. Um, he's just kind of an electrifying guy. Very good in space. Didn't get used that much last year, but I think coming in this year, is he's going to get some work, and I'm excited to see what he's got at that kind of wide receiver, that slot position.
Yeah, just seems like he's probably not going to get the ball because they're
Yeah,
bringing
there's a lot
back.
of mouths to feed.
They're
Yep.
bringing everybody back, plus adding a guy who's certainly better than him. So
Yeah,
it seems like.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, maybe if he can get on the field and add maybe a little something, whether that be a type of a screen game or whatever else, something different than what the others bring.
Yep.
He might have a shot, but obviously a super crowded room of pass catchers. So
Yeah. I'm not too worried about the offense. I think if they struggle or kind of underperform their projection, it's going to be on that defensive side of the ball. Starting up front, you obviously lose Jalen Phillips, Quincy Roche, and obviously Roche didn't play last year, but all those guys went to the draft last year. And so it kind of your edge rush that was so good last year is kind of gets erased. They have some guys I think who can make some noise, kind of highlighted by Jafari Harvey, who from all reports has had a really good spring. Very good body, 6'4", 250, long.
yes.
I like his game. Up front, that Nesta Jade Silvera, he's just a dog. Like he's just kind of like a space eater. He's not gonna get moved around too much. But yeah, I think that's probably their biggest hole right now is they gotta find a way to replace Jalen Phillips and Quincy Roche off the edge. Can they get pressure by just bringing 4 guys like they were able to last year is a question mark. Manny Diaz is one of the better defensive coaches in the country, though, so I'm sure he's gonna have some restock there. Um, I mean, and moving on to the thing I worry the most about is this linebacking core. I mean, it's just like not there. Miami's linebackers stink. You watched that UNC game and like, I mean, I don't know if the linebackers made over 10 tackles combined. They weren't tackling Javonte Williams or Michael Carter. They weren't even there. Like I mean, they never really showed a good sense of the ball, a good sense of the game. Weren't great tacklers. You hope they can just figure it out. They got everybody returning. They didn't lose any of them. They just need to be better as a unit. That really struck because I mean they went from having Shaquille Quarterman and Michael Pickney, who are all American, all ACC guys, to just not much experience in it, and it took its toll last year.
Yeah, and maybe they'll get a shot to. I mean, obviously last year's a brutal year to have to replace all 3 linebackers, which is essentially what they were doing. So
Yeah,
that does get difficult when you can't practice, and even more difficult when you're never really in a game situation with
that's right.
tackling in the full
Yep,
gambit. So
yep.
maybe you can assume they get better. I do sort of live by the principle like it's so great to return guys, but if you're only returning guys who
Bad
are
players.
really
Yeah,
pretty bad, it's like,
yeah.
whew, like hopefully you can maybe replace, not return them, even if they're back. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what else they have. It's like you got the guys you got. We'll see.
And the
I don't
biggest
see how
problem
it's
is
going to
that
get
D
much
line
better.
is
But
getting that D line I don't think is getting better either. So that's just going to make the linebacker
yeah,
job harder to do.
because Jalen Phillips was
Yeah, he's
super
a beast.
disruptive
And
everywhere.
Roche
So
was too. Roche was really good too. So I mean, let's move back to the strength of the defense, and I think it's his back end. Tyreke Stevenson transferring in from Georgia, who was kind of a weird transfer, but Miami fans, I'm sure, aren't complaining about it. Former 5-star recruit coming back to Miami. That's a great addition, and that just goes along with Al Blades and DJ Ivy, who are going to be back. So that's an experienced and talented cornerback room. And then obviously we don't need to talk much about Bubba Bouldin, who's one of the better safeties in the country. I'll note Bubba Bouldin can maybe make the linebackers or kind of
I was
cover
gonna
up for the
say
backers
he's
because
gonna
he
need to
walks
help
up a
them
lot.
because
Yeah.
he's a tackling safety, and they're gonna need a guy who can protect them a little bit
Yep. I agree.
from getting exposed and gashed by running backs. Having said all that, he didn't exactly do it last year because they still gave up a billion yards running the ball. But I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Like, just another year returning guys who have the sort of style you want to have at the safety spot. I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts about their other safety, but Bubba Bouldin obviously going to lead that room.
Yeah, Bubba Bouldin is one of the better safeties in the country. I like him. And it's just, I mean, finishing up and over, looking at this Miami team as a whole, this offense is I hope this offense, and I think this offense will be so good. They pretty much returned everybody to an offense that was cooking last year. And then they just add kind of their biggest miss, which is a big wide receiver who can catch balls over the middle. Obviously, they lose Brevin Jordan, but Will Mallory, I think, can kind of continue that good tight end play. So this offense, I think, is going to take a next step and be one of the better offenses in the country. The question is that defense, they lose some of their best players. They lose their two best players, I would say, in Phillips and Quincy Roche, at probably one of the more important positions, that edge rusher position. And so
the only thing about it is it's not exactly what they struggled with. I mean, I know your Dion's job is not exactly to contain the run. It's much more pass rush focus, but
yeah.
But I mean, it's still always hard to lose 2 NFL picks, and especially when one's like a top 20. So.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see. Jonathan Ford is somebody I read about 2 years ago as a really good interior guy for them. I wonder what's going on with him. He didn't really play much last year. I think he only registered 19 tackles isn't too bad for a guy inside. But I look for him to kind of be a playmaker for them inside too. So, I mean, it's about this defense. Can they stop the run? Can they avoid what happened? I'm looking at their games last year, like North Carolina. They gave up on defense. You don't even
62. Just can't lose.
You don't even want to know the rushing is. They gave up 10 yards per carry for 555 yards of rushing.
Yeah, it's 10 yards is just ridiculous. That actually horrifies me for this team because they really never played any good defense against anyone. So, I mean, when they played good teams, they gave up 30 plus pretty consistently.
Clemson gave up when they played Clemson, they gave up 258 yards. So yeah, it's a problem, and guess what? It's going to be a problem when you play Alabama September 4th. So you got to be able to stop the run, and that's one of the most demoralizing things for defense is when you just can't get off the field and they're running it down your throat. And then not letting Derek King be on the field. So I think that's something they need to work on and try to address, especially at that linebacker position. And I guess given an overlook at the schedule, Alabama is going to be a tough game week 1, neutral site in Atlanta. I think App State they can handle. Michigan State, an out-of-conference game that's interesting. I think they can beat them. They get into ACC play. I think they can handle a lot of these guys. If I'm not mistaken, they do play North Carolina, because they're in the same division. They play North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Is probably their biggest in-conference game. But I don't think there's many teams better than them, and they avoid playing Clemson. So they're only going to lose to North Carolina. Or, I mean,
NC State will be able to bang with them, I think.
Yep,
I mean, they're going to need to deal with the running backs there who are solid players, so they're going to have to be ready. I think their schedule is not bad, but
no.
NC State and North Carolina both can give them a run. Their out of conference is not easy with Bama and Michigan State, so we'll see. And honestly, who knows about Florida State? Because that team, I feel like I'm always just waiting for them to kind of put it together. It's still a fairly talented football team. I don't love Mike Norvell, but it's not a team you can sleep on, especially given that it's a bit of an in-state rival, and there is some – you never know what'll happen in rivalry games. So we'll see. I don't think it's an easy schedule. I mean, it'll probably come down to whether they can beat North Carolina if they're going to be playing in that conference title game. I think.
Yeah, I was I was saying in
close.
my notes I think their ceiling is 11-1. So I think their ceiling is they lose to Alabama and then run the table and play for the ACC championship game. I think their floor is probably 8-4, where they lose to Bama, where they drop at NC State, where they drop at UNC, and then maybe throw in another loss to Michigan State or a tough App State.
They could lose to NC State, App State, or Michigan State.
This team is good. It's gonna be a solid team. I mean, for Miami fans who want the U to be back, this is kind of gonna be a good stepping stone year into a very good recruiting class that Manny Diaz has put together the last couple of years. So.
I think all football fans wouldn't mind seeing Miami back, and even more so just getting another competitive team in the ACC.
Well, we'll see how long the ACC
North
lasts.
Carolina, Miami, or Florida State need to give us something there, because right now nobody can step on the field and challenge Clemson, which is just kind of boring. It makes a Power 5 conference that you want to be exciting far less exciting when there's such a. I think you could argue there's a little bit of that in the Big Ten too, but I'd say it's as bad as it is anywhere, and it's in the ACC in terms of top end not being able to get a game out of anyone. So
there are thoughts.
I'm rooting for them. I'm nowhere near as convinced as you, I will say.
Yeah, I'm definitely higher.
You're giving up 10 in the run. It's like I don't see how that's going to change much, but. Maybe Manny Diaz, a defensive guy, so maybe he can.
Well, it's interesting to note that like other games, like Pitt only averaged an eighth of a yard. Like, all right, so like
it sucked.
Not eighth of a yard, 0.8 yards.
It was horrible.
Yeah, outside of Clemson and North Carolina, only one team averaged over 5 yards a carry, and that was Virginia. So,
but that's like the problem,
But nothing. Everything else was under 5 yards per game.
When
so
they play the stinky teams, they do good. I don't know.
I agree. So there are thoughts on Miami. I think they're going to be playing for an ACC championship come early December. I think those a little lower on them than I am. We want to know what you guys think, so leave your comments in the comment section, and we look forward to giving you guys a new episode soon. Peace.